Hare Krishna. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Sri Guru Ayananda.
Do we take it up? No. We'll chant the Sanskrit together, and then the English word. Okay. So it's what chapter is it? Chapter 726. Chant together. Edaham sarvadetan Artamanani chajana Vishani chaputani Mam tu vedana kashchana. Next.
O Arjuna, as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, I know everything that has happened in the past, all that is happening in the present, and all things that are yet to come. I also know all living entities, but me, no one knows.
Text 27. Ichadesha samutena dhanva mohina bharata sarvabhutani sammoham sargayanti parantapa.
O sign of Bharat, Arjuna, O conqueror of the foe, all living entities are born into delusion, overcome by the dualities of desire and hate.
Text 28. Yesham tantagatam papam jananam purakamanam te dvanda moha nirukta bhajante mam vidugataha.
Persons who have acted piously in previous lives and in this life, whose sinful actions are completely eradicated, and who are freed from the duality of delusion, engage themselves in my service with determination.
Next one. Amashpityayatlanki Vedamattadvidu Krishna Adhyatmam Karma Chakiram.
Translation. Intelligent persons who are endeavoring for liberation from old age and death take refuge in me in devotional service. They are actually Brahman because they entirely know everything about transcendental and fruitive activities.
Take 3. Sarvabhutam Dhamma Sarvabhutam Shantasaha.
Translation. Those who know me as the Supreme Lord, as the governing principle of the material manifestation, who know me as the one underlying all the demigods and as the one sustaining all sacrifices, can, with steadfast mind, understand and know me even at the time of death.
Okay, so that was. Arjuna Vacha Kim Tad Brahma Kim Adhyatman Kim Karma Purushottama Adibhutam Chikim Proktam.
Translation. Arjuna inquired, O my Lord, O Supreme Person, what is Brahman? What is the Self? What are fruitive activities? What is this material manifestation? And what are the demigods? Please explain this to me.
Text 2. Ayagyakitam Kotra Desmurasu Prayanikare Chakatam Yayosi Tatmabe.
Translation. How does this Lord of sacrifice live in the body? And in which part does he live, O Madhusudana? And how can those engaged in devotional service know you at the time of death?
Text 3. Shivam Chu Aksharam Mamapam Jatma Chite Muktapavam Svagakam Sujitaha.
Translation. Supreme Lord said, the indestructible, transcendental living entity is called Brahman, and his eternal nature is called the Self. Action pertaining to the development of these material bodies is called karma, or fruitive activities.
Text 4. Vacha Dehibatam.
Translation. Physical nature is known to be endlessly mutable. The universe is the cosmic form of the Supreme Lord, And I am the Lord, represented as the Super Soul, dwelling in the heart of every embodied being.
Text 5. Antakali Chamari Svakalevaram Yaprayati Samadbhavam Nati Nasyatu Samshaya.
Translation. And whoever, at the time of death, quits his body, remembering me alone, at once attains my nature. Of this there is no doubt.
Text 6. Kalevaram Pantamratikoteya Sratad Bhava Bhavika.
Translation. Whatever state of being one remembers when he quits his body, that state he will attain without fail.
Excellent. Tasmat Saveshu Kaleshu Mamanusmayujicha Mayapitamano Mamivaisas Samshara.
Translation. Therefore, O Arjuna, you should always think of me in the form of Krishna, and at the same time carry out your prescribed duty of fighting. With your activities dedicated to me and your mind and intelligence fixed on me, you will attain me without doubt.
26.
No, we don't. Just do the translation.
Okay.
Purple.
Okay. Translation. O Arjuna, as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, I know everything that has happened in the past. All that is happening in the present, and all things that are yet to come. I also know all the new entities, but me no one knows. Oh, if the speaker is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, then that would mean by definition that he's the first person. He knows everything, past, present, and future. And he knows everyone, but no one can know him because he's too great. He's too vast. How could they know him if he was existing before before them? He's the Adi Purusham, original person. So he must know everything. Some people are not interested in reading books because, especially books that are religious oriented, because they think that it's just a question of belief. Some people believe in it, some people don't believe in it. And they don't take it as a factual. Especially a statement like this where the speaker, in this case, Lord Krishna, is saying that he's the beginning, middle, and the end of everything. He knows everything. No one knows him completely. They don't think this scientific. They want scientific proof. Well, there's much proof, but it might not be accepted by persons who don't have sufficient piety. I'll ask on the next text.
Text number 27. Chadwesha Samutena Vanhamay Bharata Sarvagutani Samoham Sargayanti Purantapa. Translation by His Divine Grace, Srila Prabhupada, and purport. O sign of Bharata, Arjuna, O conqueror of the foe, all living entities are born into delusion, overcome by the dualities of desire and hate. Report. The real constitutional position of a living entity is that of subordination to the Supreme Lord, who is pure knowledge. The one is deluded into separation from this pure knowledge, he becomes controlled by illusory energy and cannot understand the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The illusory energy is manifested in the duality of desire and hate. Due to desire and hate, the ignorant person wants to become one with the Supreme Lord and envies Krishna as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Pure devotees who are not so deluded or contaminated by desire and hate can understand that Lord Sri Krishna appears by his internal potencies, but those who are deluded by duality and nescience think the Supreme Personality of Godhead is created by material energies. This is their misfortune. Such deluded persons symptomatically dwell in dualities of dishonor and honor, misery and happiness, woman and man, good and bad, pleasure and pain, etc., thinking, this is my wife, this is my house, I am the master of this house, I am the husband of this wife. These are the dualities of delusion. Those who are so deluded by dualities are completely foolish and therefore cannot understand the Supreme Personality of Godhead.
Text 28. Yesham ta anta katam papam jnanam punya kamanam te dayan moha nukta bhajante mam jaya vrahata. Translation. Person who has acted piously in previous lives and in this life, whose sinful actions are completely eradicated, and who are free from the duality of delusion, engage themselves in my service with determination. We turn this down a little bit. Purport. Those eligible for elevation to the transcendental position are mentioned in this verse. For those who are sinful, atheistic, foolish, and deceitful, it is very difficult to transcend the duality of desire and hate. Only those who have passed their lives in practicing the regulative principles of religion, who have acted piously and have conquered sinful reactions, can accept devotional service and gradually rise to the pure knowledge of the Supreme Personality Godhead. And gradually they can meditate in trance on the Supreme Personality Godhead. That is a process of trance, of being situated on the spiritual platform. This elevation is possible in Krishna consciousness and the association of pure devotees who can deliver one from delusion. It is stated in the stream of Bhagavatam that if one actually wants to be liberated, he must render service to the devotees. But one who associates with materialistic people is on the path leading to the darkest regions of existence. All the devotees of the Lord traverse this earth just to recover the conditioned souls from their delusion. The impersonalists do not know that forgetting their constitutional position as subordinate to the Supreme Lord is the greatest violation of God's law. Unless one is reinstated in his own constitutional position, it is not possible to understand the Supreme Personality or to be fully engaged in its transcendental loving service with determination.
Text 29. Intelligent persons who are endeavoring for liberation from old age and death take refuge in me in devotional service. They are actually Brahman because they entirely know everything about transcendental and fruitive activities. Purport. Birth, death, old age, and diseases affect this material body, but not the spiritual body. There is no birth, death, old age, and disease for the spiritual body. So one who attains the spiritual body becomes one of the associates of the Supreme Personality of Godhead and engages in eternal devotional service. So one who attains the spiritual body becomes one of the associates of the Supreme Personality of Godhead and engages in eternal devotional service, is really liberated. Aham Brahmasmi, I am spirit. It is said that one should understand that he is Brahman, spirit soul. This Brahman conception of life is also in devotional service, as described in this verse. The pure devotees are transcendentally situated on the Brahman platform, and they know everything about transcendental and the material activities. Four kinds of impure devotees who engage themselves in the transcendental service of the Lord achieve their respective goals, and, by the grace of the Supreme Lord, when they are fully Krishna conscious, they actually enjoy spiritual association with the Supreme Lord. But those who are worshippers of demigods never reach the Supreme Lord in his supreme planet. Even the less intelligent Brahman realized persons cannot reach the supreme planet of Krishna, known as Goloka Vrindavan. Only persons who perform activities in Krishna consciousness, Mam Ashritya, are actually entitled to be called Brahman. Because they are actually endeavoring to reach the Krishna planet. Such persons have no misgivings about Krishna, and thus they are factually Brahman. Those who are engaged in worshipping the form or archa of the Lord, or who are engaged in meditation on the Lord simply for liberation from material bondage, also know, by the grace of the Lord, the purport of Brahman, Adhibhuta, etc., as explained by the Lord in the next chapter.
Text 30. Those who know me as the Supreme Lord, as the governing principle of the material manifestation, who know me as the one underlying all the demigods and as the one sustaining all sacrifices, can, with steadfast mind, understand and know me even at the time of death. Purport. Persons acting in Persons acting in Krishna consciousness are never entirely deviated from the path of understanding the Supreme Personality of Godhead. In the transcendental association of Krishna consciousness, one can understand how the Supreme Lord is the governing principle of the material manifestation, and even of the demigods. Gradually, by such transcendental association, one becomes convinced of the Supreme Personality of Godhead himself, and at the time of death, such a Krishna-conscious person can never forget Krishna. Naturally, he is thus promoted to the planet of the Supreme Lord, Goloka Vrindavana. This 7th chapter particularly explains how one can become a fully Krishna-conscious person. The beginning of Krishna consciousness is association of persons who are Krishna conscious. Such association is spiritual and puts one directly in touch with the Supreme Lord, and by his grace one can understand Krishna to be the Supreme God. At the same time, one can really understand the constitutional position of the living entity and how the living entity forgets Krishna and becomes entangled in material activities. By gradual development of Krishna consciousness in good association, the living entity can understand that due to forgetfulness of Krishna, he has become conditioned by the laws of material nature. He can also understand that this human form of life is an opportunity to regain Krishna consciousness, and that it should be fully utilized to attain the causeless mercy of the Supreme Lord. Many subjects have been discussed in this chapter. the man in distress, the inquisitive man, the man in want of material necessities, knowledge of Brahman, knowledge of Paramatma, liberation from birth, death, and diseases, and worship of the Supreme Lord. However, he who is actually elevated in Krishna consciousness does not care for the different processes. He simply directly engages himself in activities of Krishna consciousness and thereby factually attains his constitutional position as eternal servitor of Lord Krishna. In such a situation, he takes pleasure in hearing and glorifying the Supreme Lord in pure devotional service. He is convinced that by doing so, all his objectives will be fulfilled. This determined faith is called Dridha Vrata, and it is the beginning of Bhakti Yoga, or transcendental loving service. That is the verdict of all scriptures. The 7th chapter of the Gita is the substance of that conviction.
Thus then, the Bhaktivedanta purports to the 7th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita in the matter of knowledge of the Absolute. Now we go to chapter 8 of Bhagavad Gita as it is. Arjuna Vacha Kim Tad Brahma Kamatyatmam Kim Karma Purushottama Adiputam Chikim Proktam Adigdaiva Kamuchyate. Arjuna inquired, O my Lord, O Supreme Person, what is Brahman? What is the self? What are fruit of activities? What is this material manifestation? And what are the demigods? Please explain this to me. Report. In this chapter, Lord Krishna answers these different questions of Arjuna, beginning with, what is Brahman? The Lord also explains karma, fruit of activities, devotional service, and yoga principles, and devotional service in its pure form. The Srimad Bhagavatam explains that the Supreme Absolute Truth is known as Brahman, Paramatma, and Bhagavan. In addition, the living entity, individual soul, is also called Brahman. Arjuna also inquires about Atma, which refers to body, soul, and mind. According to the Vedic dictionary, Atma refers to the mind, soul, body, and senses also. Arjuna has addressed the Supreme Lord as Purushottama, Supreme Person, which means that he was putting these questions not simply to a friend, but to the Supreme Person, knowing him to be the supreme authority, able to give definitive answers. So these are very important questions. What is Brahman? What is the self? What are the fruit of activities? What is this material manifestation? So these questions are very seldom asked by ordinary people. These are perfect questions, and they lead to perfection of the human form of life. Any other comments or questions?
Text 2. Adiyajnana katam kotra dehismin madhudasadana prayana kalicha kataham gyeyoshi niyatat mabhi. Translation. How does the Lord of Sacrifice live in the body? In which part does he live, O Madhusana? And how can those engaged in devotional service know you at the time of death? Purport. Lord of Sacrifice accepts Indra and Vishnu. Vishnu is the chief of the primal demigods, including Brahma and Shiva, and Indra is the chief of the administrative demigods. Both Indra and Vishnu are worshipped by yajna performances, but their But here, Arjuna asks who is actually the Lord of Yajna, sacrifice, and how is the Lord residing within the body of living entity. Arjuna addresses the Lord as Madhudashadan, Masudan. I'm sorry, I'm trouble pronouncing today. Madhusudanan, because Krishna once killed a demon named Madhu. Actually, these questions, which are the nature of doubts, do not have arisen in the mind of Arjuna because Arjuna is a Krishna conscious devotee. Therefore, these doubts are like demons. Since Krishna is so expert in killing demons, Arjuna here addresses him as Madhusudan, so that Krishna might kill the demonic doubts that arise in Arjuna's mind. Now the word prayana kali is in this verse is very significant because whatever we do in life will be tested at the time of death. Arjuna fears that at the time of death, those who are in Krishna consciousness will forget the Supreme Lord, because at such a time the body functions are disrupted and the mind may be in a panic-stricken state. Therefore, Maharaj Purushekar, a great devotee, prays, "My dear Lord, may I die immediately now that I am healthy, so that the swan of my mind may enter into the stem of the lotus feet." This metaphor is used because the swan often takes pleasure in entering the stem of the lotus flower. Similarly, the mind of the pure devotee is drawn to the lotus feet of the Lord. Maharaj Kurukshetra fears that at the moment of death, his throat will be so choked up that he will not be able to chant the holy names. So it is better to die immediately. Arjuna questions how one's mind can remain fixed on Krishna's lotus feet at such times.
Text 3. The Supreme Lord said, "The indestructible, transcendental living entity is called Brahman, and his eternal nature is called the Self. Action pertaining to the development of these material bodies is called karma, or fruit of activities." Purport. Brahman is indestructible and eternally existing, and its constitution is not changed at any time. But beyond Brahman, there is Parabrahman. Brahman refers to the living entity, and Parabrahman refers to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The constitutional position of the living entity is different from the position he takes in the material world. In material consciousness, his nature is to try to be the Lord of matter, but in spiritual Krishna consciousness, his position is to serve the Supreme. When the living entity is in material consciousness, he has to take on various bodies in the material world. That is called karma, or varied creation by the force of material consciousness. In Vedic literature, the living entity is called Jivatma and Brahman, but he is never called Parabrahman. The living entity, Jivatma, takes different positions. Sometimes he merges into the dark material nature and identifies himself with matter, and sometimes he identifies himself with the superior spiritual nature. Therefore, he is called the Supreme Lord's marginal energy, according to his identification with material or spiritual nature. He receives a material or spiritual body. In material nature, he may take a body from any of the 8.4 million species of life. But in spiritual nature, he has only one body. In material nature, he is sometimes manifested as a man, demigod, an animal, a beast, a bird, etc., according to his karma.
To attain material heavenly planets and enjoy their facilities, he sometimes performs sacrifices, yajna. But when his merit is exhausted, he returns to earth again in the form of a man. In the process of sacrifice, the living entity makes specific sacrifices to attain specific heavenly planets and consequently reaches them. When the merit of sacrifice is exhausted, then the living entity descends to earth in the form of rain, then takes on the form of grains, and the grains are eaten by man and transformed into semen, which impregnates a woman. And thus the living entity once again attains the human form to perform sacrifice, and so repeat the same cycle. In this way, the living entity perpetually comes and goes on the material path. The Krishna conscious person, however, avoids such sacrifices. He takes directly to Krishna consciousness and thereby prepares himself to return to Godhead. Impersonalist commentators on the Gita unreasonably assume that Brahman takes the form of Jiva in the material world. And to substantiate this, they refer to chapter 15, verse 7 of the Gita. But this verse also speaks of the living entity as an eternal fragment of myself. The fragment of God, the living entity, may fall down into the material world, but the Supreme Lord, Achyuta, never falls down. Therefore, this assumption that the Supreme Brahman assumes the form of Jiva is not acceptable. It is important to remember that in Vedic literature, Brahman, the living entity, is distinguished from Parabrahman, the Supreme Lord.
Does everyone understand this? Do you belong to the material energy or the spiritual energy?
Ask the question.
Well, first of all, try to answer this. Do you belong to the material energy or the spiritual energy?
Sometimes material.
No, actually, you belong to the spiritual energy, but in illusion, sometimes we think I belong to this material energy. I've heard Christians discuss this, and many times Christians says that we are a combination of matter and spirit. That's not based on Bhagavad Gita or Now, what's your question?
My question is, and this might be a little bit of semantics, so I'm sorry if it is, but I was wondering, because Prabhupada said in this purport that the living entity it's in the it's in the third paragraph, first sentence. It says, the living entity makes specific sacrifices to attain heavenly planets and consequently reaches them. But I think it said later here it goes. The Krishna conscious person, however, avoids such sacrifices. So are these sacrifices also when the living entity becomes degraded and goes into animal life as a beast or a bird or aquatic? Does he mean like the living entity sacrifices his own like free will to become an animal?
Well, this earthly planet is called the field of activities, and in the human form of life, it's like a junction. We have a free will to go either up or down, or to stay here, or to go back home, back to Godhead. Whatever you want, you could reach by worshiping demigods. You could go to higher planets, Chandraloka, Mahaloka, Janarloka. There are higher planets where you could live for millions of years and then enjoy sense gratification and lord it over material nature. You may have a responsible position in the service of the Lord. But when your merit is finished, you come down as rain in drops of rain. then you take on the form of grains or grass. And those grains are eaten by a man, like grains like rice or wheat. And then the grain is transformed into semen, and that semen can be used to impregnate a woman, and then the living entity takes birth in the human form once more. So this is the process of transmigration of the soul. But to stop this process, we could concentrate our worship on the Supreme. This chapter is called Attaining the Supreme. And this is confidential knowledge because no one knows what the Supreme is. Simply we've been engaged life after life in sense gratification, not knowing what the ultimate goal is. So this Bhagavad Gita is very important for giving us right direction, how to get out of this prison of material world.
I wanted to make a small comment that sometimes the impersonalists, they'll say things along the lines of, well, Brahman, as a part of his Leela, he takes the position of a fallen jiva. And this really makes no sense if we think about it, because everything about the material world is just suffering. It's birth, death, old age, and disease. So why anyone would come here with the intention to enjoy is kind of ridiculous. But furthermore, all the jivas, they're part and parcel, so they're not all powerful. If I have something as small as a toothache, I can't really make it go away without someone else's or some higher power's help. So the living entity is always in that position that in order to get out of the material entanglement, he has to surrender to Krishna and to Krishna's representative. So yeah.
Very good. And Krishna's another name is Achyuta. Achyuta means one who never falls down. And if Krishna or God can be overcome by Maya, then Maya would be greater than God. But that's not true, because Maya is one of the energies of God, and she's a pure devotee of God. And she has the thankless task of deluding the conditioned souls. So no one should think that when someone takes the form of a hog eating stool, it's Leela. He's forced to take that form because of his sinful activities. But Krishna's activities are never sinful, and Krishna is never degraded in that way.
Text 4. Physical nature is known to be endlessly mutable. The universe is the cosmic form of the Supreme Lord, and I am that Lord represented as the Supersoul dwelling in the heart of every embodied being. Purport. The physical nature is constantly changing. Material bodies generally pass through 6 stages. They are born, they grow, they remain for some duration, they produce some byproducts, they dwindle, and then they vanish. This physical nature is called adibhutam, because it is created at a certain point and will be annihilated at a certain point. The conception of the universal form of the Supreme Lord that includes all the demigods and their different planets is called adidaivatam. The individual soul, jiva, accompanies the body. The super soul, a plenary representation of Lord Krishna, is called the Paramatma, or Adiyagya, and is situated in the heart. The word eva is particularly important in the context of this verse, because by this word the Lord stresses that the Paramatma is not different from him. The super soul, the supreme personality of Godhead, seated beside the individual soul, is the witness of the individual soul's activity and is the source of consciousness. The supersoul gives the jiva an opportunity to act freely, and he witnesses his activities. The functions of all these different manifestations of the Supreme Lord automatically become clarified for the pure Krishna conscious devotee engaged in transcendental service of the Lord. A gigantic universal form of the Lord called Adidaivatam is contemplated by the neophyte who cannot approach the Supreme Lord in his manifestation as Supersoul. The neophyte is advised to contemplate the universal form whose legs are considered the lower planets, and whose eyes are considered the sun and moon, and whose head is considered the upper planetary system. Any remaining comments before we close? Jagannath Prabhu?
Yes, I was just wondering where we can find this description of the universal form. I know it's in the Bhagavatam, but I don't know where. Is it in the second canto? And what chapters? I was wondering where we can find the description of the universal form. I know it's in the Bhagavatam. I think second canto, but I don't know which chapters. Okay, thank you.
Okay, Bhagavad Gita ki jai.